So welcome everybody. So nice to see you all, and I see some familiar faces. Today marks the final day of our ICW 2021. And we're very excited today because we have a special guest. We've got Coach Mariana Lead. She's she's here from the other side of the globe, from New York. And we are really happy to have her. She's a master certified coach and an ICF assessor. And she's also the founder of Goal Imagery Institute. And she will share with us today about, she will share with us all the ins and outs of holistic coaching and the way to coaching mastery. So yes, without further ado, we're very honored to have you, Mariana.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Absolutely. Okay, so let me share my screen and we can start the presentation. Okay. Just 1 second.
I love the birds in the background.
Thank you. So. Here we go. Okay. Okay. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about holistic qualities of ICF core competencies, the importance of addressing all aspects of who your client is, and how to avoid a common mistake that definitely affects coaching performance. So what I wanted to talk about, I mean, we all know core competencies, and actually it's very interesting coming back to this topic because I created these slides back in 2016, then I updated them in 2017, and every other year when I present this, I have to update it a bit, and now it's pretty exciting because ICF created new updated core competencies, and as a school, I was required to actually answer a questionnaire about how do we, in our training, include the who of our clients. So it's exciting for me to see because in the past, it was really not discussed until coaches were applying for an MCC certification. And now it's upfront and center for anyone who wants to be an ICF coach, which is very exciting for me. And so, well, let's look at, okay, I want to click on the next one, and this next one is not. Okay, here we go. So let's talk about what is holistic. Well, according to the dictionary, it has to do with being whole, right? So not a fracture, not a piece of something, not a part of something, but a whole, either system or a person, all of the aspects. And this is like really old thing, right? I mean, we've seen this probably even before we enrolled into a coach training, because ICF did not change it, and I'm happy that they didn't. This is the definition of how we perceive coaching clients. And I think that understanding that we must view our clients as whole, here's that word, whole, creative, and resourceful, really defines the energy of coaching and what it really means. So when we look at our clients as whole, creative, and resourceful, then maybe, just maybe, we can start thinking about taking a step back and trusting, which is a core competency that stayed, creating trust and safety, trusting yourself, trusting your clients, and trusting the coaching process without pushing, without really thinking about how am I going to pull my clients through to something from here to there, but instead really being invitational and inviting their beliefs, their thoughts, their processes, and letting them figure it out, which is a skill in itself, like really how to stand aside and let the client figure whatever it is that they're figuring out without you interfering all that much. But more than anything else, acknowledging, noticing, and bringing back questions and feedback to the client. So the coaching presence at an MCC level, this is a competency, right? That this is from the table. Guys, if you don't have the link to the comparison table that ICF have been using since 2009, they did not update it with the current core competencies. But actually on the topic of the difference between updated and the competencies that we used to have, it's not really changed. What really changed is that what I'm saying is the behaviors didn't change. Coaching behaviors and understanding of coaching behaviors are exactly the same. It's just, for instance, powerful questioning and direct communication are now rightfully so part of creating awareness or evoking awareness. So those behaviors are still here, but maybe some of the competencies are not so visible to people who are coming in from outside and looking at the website. So the connection is to whole of who client is, how the client learns, what the client has to teach the coach, right? So when we look at this, maybe it's easier to understand the perspective of who the client is. And in practical terms, I think it's more difficult to understand how do we really include this in our coaching conversations, in our questions, in our feedback, other than asking that question. So how can you use this in other aspects of your life, right? I mean, I hear this question, and sometimes this question is asked almost inappropriately because it doesn't match the context. And right, like for instance, the client wants to create a schedule or a plan, and then the coach is asking, so how can you use this in other areas of your lives, of your life? And the client is just looking like, what? It doesn't make any sense. And so what I say to my students and to my mentees is that it's really nice that we have templates. It's nice that we have all those questions. But most important than anything else is to follow your intuition and common sense. And trusting, it's always going back to trust. Because if you don't trust yourself, the process, and your client, then you will not be able to even become aware or to be present fully in the moment. Because you will always be thinking about the best thing to ask or the best way to lead the coaching session versus really being there, present, and really appreciating who your client is and listening, as we understand from ICF perspective, listening with all of our being and receiving all of who the client is, noticing the client's body language, and that includes tone of voice, whatever gestures, the way they look, everything about how they say what they say versus just listening to the words alone. And to be able to relax to actually hear your client, to really listen, you have to develop trust and really understand that more important than anything else is following your intuition and common sense. Yes, and I know this is being recorded. So yes, this is absolutely the most important thing. It's more important than whatever templates that you may possibly get your hands on in terms of coaching structure or questions that you may want to ask them or any other parts of your coaching vocabulary. So when we talk about utilizing all aspects of who your client is, then we are really looking at all of those aspects: spiritual, intellectual, physical, emotional. And I know that there are different schools of thought, and sometimes it's difficult to decide what type of training to take, because there are going to be spiritual teachings and going to be trainings that are really based on that. And there is a brain-based coaching, which is based on neuroscience. And here we talk about intellectual involvement and influences, right? Emotional, probably you would think about emotional intelligence and awareness in general. And physical probably makes you think of health coaching, fitness coaching, and coaching niches along those, maybe mind-body coaching. But when I was opening up my school, I was really early. I was really ahead of my times, because from the very beginning, I said to myself, it's just not making any sense. How can you look at a client in a vacuum and just regard one aspect of their lives? And that actually reminds me of another issue, which is coaches always, right, are told by marketers mostly that they must pick a niche. If you don't pick a niche, you're just not going to you're not going to become successful. And so when people are lucky enough, because some people don't know what niche that they are going to be attracted to, and some of you do, and so those who actually do, then it's easier to find the training that matches your niche. But then there's still back to an issue of life. And the issue of life is that no matter what topic you're going to attract your clients to, no matter what your niche is, as soon as you create trust, back to trust, and as soon as your client trusts you and wants to open up more, they're going to start bringing any topics connected with whatever's happening in their lives, right? So you may start coaching them on a career, and then let's say something happens at home and the kids are not listening, and maybe this person manages a team of 20 people, but they can't deal with their own son. And it happens all the time, right? And then the client is going to complain. And what is the coach going to do if the coach is not trained to be open to all of these possibilities and to regard who the client is versus the issue? Now, what is the issue? Issue is the niche. That's it. Niche equals issue. Like, digest that concept, right? Because if you choose your niche, then you're saying that I can only talk about one issue. And clearly, it also creates a lot of confusion, because if you are going to be coaching a niche, right? Well, then it means that you're an expert on that topic. And so it's going to be very natural that your clients are going to be asking you, so what do you think? What should I do? And then we start complaining to each other saying, I don't know, these clients I'm getting lately, I know my niche and they're like, should be good clients, but they keep asking me for advice. Well, why shouldn't you? Why shouldn't they? They think you're an expert. because you're only focusing on one niche, right? But as I said, to me, it was always limiting. Like I never niched, I don't know if that's a word, I never niched myself along any specific topic. And whoever I'm attracting as a client, they know that I am coaching a person first, and people have issues. You know, in my coach training school, one of the requirements is not only, well, Khadija knows, right? Not only to coach, but also to be prepared to be coached. And so in our classes, every single lesson, everyone coaches, and we don't patronize, we don't censor what our students are bringing in. So maybe this week, maybe I want to be coached on my fitness goals. Next week, maybe I want to be coached on career goals. And then the following week, maybe, I don't know, maybe I had a relationship or communication breakdown and I need to talk about that. So I think it's really important to be open and flexible and to be ready to coach anyone on any topic. And if you haven't been exposed to that in your training, well, then consciously reach out and coach people on different topics so that you create more flexibility in your toolbox. And the good news is that, and that's why we teach the way we teach, the good news is that ICF core competencies apply to any niche. There's nothing really new. You just still need to follow, you need to follow the coaching session outline, right? So there's the beginning, middle, and the end. You need to stay in the moment. You need to use pretty much the same vocabulary. And by the way, if you're regarding who more than what, which is an issue, then you'll be much more likely to use your client's language and points of reference anyway. So even if you're coaching within the same niche, your language is going to differ from client to client because people have different point of reference. Like for instance, we all know that metaphors are really great to use in coaching, right? But if I'm a sports fan and I provide a metaphor based in sports, and my client is like me, because I don't care about any sports. I don't know anything about sports. So if they provide a metaphor that has a sports reference, I'm going to be clueless. I'm going to be looking at my coach and saying, what? I don't understand this. And sometimes people want to be polite. Clients want to be polite, and they'll smile and say, yeah, yes, sounds good. But they still may not understand what you're saying because you're not using their vocabulary, you're not using their language. So when we're talking about who the client is, it's all of it, really. It's your client's beliefs, it's your client's thoughts, it's your client's expectations, it's your client's, all of these things are important, right? All of it. And points of reference in their language. How do they think? So the one common mistake that coaches do is coaching the issue and not the client. Now, how to refer to the who of the client, as I said, is easier said than done. It's easier said than done. So, well, let me ask you before we go further, and I'll appreciate everyone writing in the chat. From a ICF perspective, and in your own opinion, what do you think is more important? Exploration or pushing your clients to the result so that by the end of the coaching session, they leave with a specific result? What's more important if you have to choose?
Please, coach, can I speak?
Halima raised her hand. She has.
أنا فقط ملاحظة حق اللي يتكلمون اللغة العربية في شكرا للكوتشز اللي تبرعوا وقاعدين يكتبون قد ما يقدرون الترجمة بالعربي في الشات، فاللي يحب يتواصل يشوف الشات فبيشوف المادة باللغة العربية. شكرا. Thank you.
She was saying that thank you to those who volunteered to translate in the chat, and she's encouraging them to continue for the people.
Thank you.
شكرا لكم. So this one, there's something in Arabic. Someone is asking, which one is more important, exploration or pushing the client to the results? I guess that's something we will explore. سؤال المحاضرة.
I was going to read, but I can't read. I can't read in Arabic.
Actually, I was translating your question. I just realized that.
So
Dr.
maybe
Salman was actually translating your question, and I thought it was. Okay.
So this is an interesting thought. How the coach is to realize the options that are available. With him or her to find solution on their own way. So how do you do that? And someone says, I think exploration and raising awareness. Yes, of course it is. You knew that. But you know, I really want to explore that. How do you help coaches realize the options that are available? I'm going to give you another thing to ponder. So let's say that your client is in the industry that you have no clue about. Let's say that they're in, well, it's like industry that just it's very foreign for you. And the client is processing options, as Santhanam says, right? The client is processing options. And as the client is processing options out loud, you understand zero. You don't understand a word that the client said because the client is using professional jargon, words that you don't know, and it's not making any sense to you. What's your response? What do you do? Check the client's emotions. How do you do that? Privacy and information management systems. I'm not sure what that's about. Check, how does that work for you? How does it work for you? I will ask him, would you please help me understand that? Ask him, can you elaborate more? What makes sense to him or her? Noticing the shifts, mindset, body, voice. Yeah, well, so the thing is that we must notice the shifts if there are shifts all the time. What if there are no shifts? What if the client just talks and on, and how are you going to do this? So I liked this response from Jihani. What makes sense for him or her? Yeah, these responses, I will ask him, would you please help me understanding that? Or ask him, can you elaborate more? And this is the direction that I'd like you to come back from and not go that route. And so why? Why not that route? Anyone knows why not that route? Yes, Salma, be vulnerable, do not know, place, exactly. Yes, I don't know, and that's fine. But you know what? Even better than that, I do not need to know. I don't need to know. That's a wonderful thing, because the client, exactly. So because the client talked it out, clearly he or she got something out of it for herself or himself, right? And so my question probably would have been, so as you talk this out loud, what are we getting from this? I'm not going to assume, I'm just going to ask, what are you getting from this? Because if I'm going to be asking the client to elaborate or to explain it to me, then the next thing, the client is working for you because he is explaining something for your sake while they're paying you money, right? So everything that you do should be for the client. The client should not be explaining things to the coach. Besides, what do you care? And I'll tell you why we care. We care because we feel that if we understand, then we'll be in a better position to tell them, to formulate what would be the next step for the client. And that is the only reason when we're asking for details. And the beautiful thing is that you don't need to do that. You don't need to know any of that stuff. You don't need to do any of that stuff, right? All you need to do is ask, what is your perception as you hear yourself say that? What are you getting out from this? Right? So again, there's a difference. So yes, from the place of not knowing, but don't ask the client to educate you. So maybe we need to talk a little bit about curiosity, right? Let's talk a little bit about curiosity. Like what type of curiosity that ICF is talking about? Because they say we need to be curious and yes, and open and be in not knowing, embrace that and ask clients questions. So what does it mean? Be curious. Curious about what specifically? Let's get that in chat. What do we need to be curious about? And so yes, Atmani. And so when you say about the who, so what does that mean? What are we curious specifically? What is the who? What is that? Exactly. So exactly. So, but you're not ever going to see anywhere that we need to be curious about the issue or the details of the issue. Not going to find that anywhere. And so we don't ask about those type of details. So if a client says, exactly, so all of these are good questions. What is important to you? What does this issue mean to you? Even if you don't understand anything and the client talks through lots of different options, just simply asking, as you heard yourself say that, what does it represent to you? That would be a better question than saying, well, can you please explain it to me? Because no matter how you put it, it's still you're asking to explain it to you. One of my students, actually like literally 3 days ago, she said to me, I have this great exercise and I really want to implement it with a client when I'm not understanding what they're saying. And I'm like, so, okay, what is it? And she says, well, you know what? I can ask him to explain it as if he's explaining it to a 5-year-old. And she was so proud of herself. She was so happy that she knew this skill. And I'm like, it's a great skill because it is, and it's a great tool, but it would not be appropriate in this case. Because if your client is proficient in his or her industry and has a plan in mind Why would he be forced to explain it to a 5-year-old? He may not even be able to. Like, I still don't understand how planes fly. Do you? Does anyone here can explain to me really thoroughly how planes fly, right? So exactly. And so to put your client in that position and having to explain it like that is literally wasting his or her time. It's a waste of time, right? So yeah, so curiosity about the client to move step forward if he's stuck somehow. Okay, so yeah, if how do you do that? So what if the client is stuck? What if the client, let me just put it, let me give you a specific example again. Let's say that your client, and I hear it all the time, right? The client comes in, we all know how to establish the coaching agreement. You ask the client, so what do you think you would like to leave with by the end of our call? And the client says, I don't know. How many of you came across that? So if the client says, I don't know, what do you think that means? I mean, it could mean a few different things. I am going to eliminate few things right away. So so for instance, of course, there is a such thing as external knowing and internal knowing. So if a client wants to build a bridge and doesn't know how to do it, they're probably going to say, I don't know. And they're going to be completely right because they just don't know. But well, maybe we should break it down into a few different options, right? So what do you ask if the client actually doesn't know because it's an external thing? Let's look at that first. So it's an external thing. The client comes in, he wants to do something, and it's a really big goal, right? And when you ask him or her, what do you want to leave with? They say, I don't know. What does it really mean? Who will know if you don't? It's a good question. It's very direct. I like it. I ask, what would you say to your friend with the same issue? Yes. So, I mean, we're all kind of, even though it's very direct, but we're all kind of dancing around this. But the truth is that when people, well, most of the time, of course, there are always exceptions, and there may be many times when these approaches will work fine, you know, because coaching is an art form and it's going to be different with every client. How can you know? Seeking clarity. I ask, what would you say to your friend with the same issue? All of these are valid responses. And yet what I'm finding is that when people have a big issue and they want to leave with something, they just don't, it's not even so much as a client, it's more that the coach doesn't know how to conceptualize and create the measure of success that would address who the client is and to resolve what they came in with. And so what I like to do is to just ask what would be important or meaningful for us to explore today. And then depending on the answer, you can craft a very specific measure of success. And this is a very simple question, and a lot of coaches forget to ask it. And I also see that a lot of times your clients go into I don't know mode is when we simply don't allow enough time to explore. Now that ICF is really educating everyone about establishing the coaching agreement, which it kind of happened pretty recently, that they kind of realized that schools are not really teaching that appropriately. And now they're like, okay, there is a coaching agreement. Everyone needs to understand what coaching agreement is, right? And so now a lot of coaches, especially newer coaches, ACC coaches, and PCC coaches as well, go into panic mode. And we ask, 1 or 2 questions, and then immediately we ask about what would you like to leave with by the end of this call, you know, by the end of this session, right? And so a lot of times people don't know because they haven't been allowed enough time to explore. And when I say explore, when the client explores, that's when you're actually picking up who they are. You hear how they think. You hear how they process. And it's also cumulative, right? I mean, of course, if it's a first coaching session, you're going to be collecting, absorbing the information about the client. But if you already know the client, then you're going to take into consideration everything you know about their processing. Like, for instance, a lot of clients like literally process out loud. So if I'm processing out loud, that's not nuisance. That's not a nuisance conversation, right? It's useful because the client is actually processing their own awareness versus a client who's complaining. How many people had a client who's just complaining? Exactly. Who haven't? Who haven't? And then they go into details and then they go in a circle. And then you get closer to the end of the coaching session and you're in panic because you feel responsible. It's like, oh my goodness, we haven't done anything. And so in those cases, again, it's all about the who. It's all about the who. So you hear the client going in that mode, you just stop and you say, it sounds like this conversation is going in a circle. What are your thoughts about that? Right? Give your client a chance to take responsibility and to really look at that and be factual. So it's not blaming. I'm not even using the word you. It's not like you are going in a circle, right? It's I am noticing the conversation is going in a circle. What are your thoughts about that? Right? Let them own it because it's a fact, right? And then be in the moment and don't be afraid. So how would you know client is processing aloud? Okay, well, so when the client is processing aloud, the client is not complaining, but they're literally moving forward. So they're not talking about, well, you know, he did this or he didn't do that. You know, they're not complaining about someone. They're not complaining about the situation that happened or didn't happen. They're not talking about that, but they're literally formulating a way forward. They're looking at things, they're getting more clarity, and you hear that. It's a very, very different conversation. It's a very different dialogue when a client is processing out loud versus when they're complaining and going in a circle. So one can explore then not only thought, but also feelings and actions. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we know that coaching is a future-oriented discipline, right? And so one of the like really good one of the really good approaches is to ask your client what do they see in the future, even in connection with that issue that they're bringing. And once it's resolved, how it's going to benefit other, you know, what's going to change in their lives. What do they imagine? How are they going to act? How are they going to be? Who they're going to become? You know, so all of that is changing. And to really understand that not only that the part of the human being is like all those parts are inseparable. We're actually inseparable from each other. So there's a holistic worldview, not just about the client, but all of us. And if we understand that, then we also understand better systems theories, And so even the client, when the client is going through a positive change, some of the effects could be negative. And I think it really helps when they are able to see into the future. Like, for instance, I'm going to give you an example. For instance, the client wants to lose weight. And now he doesn't want to eat any more French fries, doesn't want to eat, he doesn't want to drink soft drinks, maybe no beer anymore, and so on and so forth. And so the next thing is going to happen that his friends are going to say, well, let's go to whatever place that they usually go to, and let's get some beer, and let's do this, and let's do that. And then they can't do it anymore. And there's definitely going to be an effect of that on their social lives. Yeah, of course, maybe they're going to get new friends, but that's also an adjustment. And it's not so easy for a lot of people to get new friends and to create new relationships. And so, they say, well, if they're real good friends, and they'll stick around and they'll understand you. But you know what? We don't really have that many friends like that. And it's going to, and the client's life is definitely going to change, right? Same thing when someone gets married, right? You move away from from the place that you know. You have to get, there's a lot of adjustments are happening on both sides. So that's a positive change, right? And yet there's going to be a lot of changes in the systems and in their families and how they view the world and how they view themselves. And when we have a child, when the family has a newborn, everything changes. And we go through those changes all the time. So it's really, really important to understand where the client is coming from and what are their surroundings, what is their environment. So even broadening it in terms of who, in terms of their lives, not just, that 1 hour with you, their coach, and the issue they bring, and they are sharing their beliefs. It's even bigger than that. The value driving, yes. So is there anything else to interpret for me from here?
Most of it is translation. I'll check Halima. She said نوع الدعم يمكن خلال.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And from Ashu, yes. So bottoming a conversation can bring back focus. Absolutely. Absolutely. And bringing it back to the client. And so I actually wanted to go back to my PowerPoint and oops. I wanted to, okay. I don't know if you can see it, probably not. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. And so this is again from the same table. The coach's invitation to exploration precedes and is significantly greater. I should have highlighted these words. Significantly greater than invitation to solution. And this is from my CF, not me. So we're in cahoots. We're in agreement, right? Because if you don't explore and if you don't allow yourself to sit with your client and to really understand where they're coming from and allow them to explore more, then the solutions and the results is not going to be sustainable. It's going to be short-lived. For sustainable result, sustainable result always comes from increased awareness and clarity. Our clients are smart. So when our clients really understand the issue, have clarity, all of a sudden they know exactly what to do. Solutions are byproducts of exploration. And if you have trust that solutions are going to come as a byproduct of exploration, then maybe you'll be able to relax a little bit more. Right? So that's really, really important. Now, speaking about who, right? The importance of who. Well, coaching is based on full partnership. And here's the question: who are you? How do you bring yourself fully? Right? I mean, ICF constantly talks about full partnership, complete partnership. When you read description of coaching at an MCC level, it's constantly, you will see the words fully partnered, in complete partnership. So full partnership means 50-50. So how does it make sense to be in the moment and to be bringing value and not pushing for results, and yet being there 100% as much as the client? How do we do that? What does it mean to bring yourself fully? Well, I mean, for me, I think it starts with being comfortable in your own skin. Because a lot of people, even though they're coaches, they still don't fully know who they are. So how can you bring yourself fully if you don't know who you are? It doesn't make any sense. So if we want and if we expect the client to come in fully and openly to the coaching session, then where are you in it? And what does it mean? So let's get back into the chat and let's talk about that. What does it mean to bring yourself, to bring your own who, to bring your own who into this equation? I don't know if I can see I don't think I can see the chat if I'm sharing this.
Yes, I'll check that for you. We've got being authentic. We've got to be naked and forget what we assume we are. Dr. Salman, I'm a human. I'm serving the client. One person, Jairus, was saying big question. And being aware of oneself, and one Othman, to be a godlike.
Well, all interesting answers.
I was going to add accepting your own imperfections.
Yes. Yes. So I think that it starts with self-awareness. We actually have this on our final exam in Goal Imagery Institute, right? So what is the prerequisites to bringing awareness to your client? And it's a multiple choice, but the correct answer is self-awareness, right? You can't overstep or bystep being aware of who you are, and providing time for yourself to digest what your client is sharing through the prism of who you are. That's why coaching is so valuable. If we wouldn't be bringing and putting through the prism of who we are, what we are receiving from the client, then the client could have been just talking to a mirror or a recorder or whatever, right? What do they need us for? But I don't think that we talk enough about silence. And I don't mean an empty silence, but I mean the type of silence that provides an opportunity to create that awareness of what it means, that you just received from your client. What does it mean to you? And then maybe we can ask a question or provide feedback or whatever that comes up. Because we always talk about providing silence to the client, giving space to the client to talk, to have a pause. And we say that, well, if a client has a pause after you ask a question, you must have asked a really good question because it makes your client think. But hardly anyone talks about allowing silence for the coach. But if we are in a 50-50 relationship, if we're in a full partnership, then why shouldn't we allow the same respect and time for our own processing? Because the only way to be fully in the moment and to really know what you want to express is to first find out what it is that you're receiving. And usually, as soon as the client stops speaking, the coach immediately starts talking. So if it's good for the client to have a pause, why isn't it the same for us? And I have to say that I use silence for many, many ailments in coaching, right? I mean, if you, if we have here maybe people who are interrupting clients, or maybe having some, I call them weeds, you know, some expressions or words or sounds that we're making habitually in our regular lives, and we're bringing it to our coaching. Silence cures all of that stuff. People, you know, coaches who complain to me, I don't know how to listen, because when I listen back to my recordings, I realize much more than I realized while I was coaching. Silence cures all of that. And all you have to do is just kind of allow yourself few moments. I know that the complaints are that those moments feel like centuries because you're allowing it to yourself, and we feel extremely vulnerable when we do that. But if you get used to it, then it's going to be absolutely wonderful. Just allowing a few moments after you hear what your client said to you, and just really sit with it. Check your own energy. Check your own response. Where does it feel in your body? What thoughts are coming up for you? How did it change your energy? Why is it changing your energy? And that's something that you will be able to bring back to your client, and that's extremely valuable. And that means full partnership.
Mariana, this is really, I think many of the coaches, many of us have an issue, not an issue, but we're very uncomfortable with silence. And how can we become comfortable without the, you know, it's one thing to be silent, but it shows in your face and in your body that you're not comfortable, you know, and it's, what's like a tip to actually be, you know, embracing that silence? But how did you manage that?
So it's going back to trust. It's developing trust with yourself. And I have to say that it's going to help not only in coaching, but in life in general. We all need to develop more trust with ourselves, with our own intuition, with our own decisions, with our own understanding of the world. And practice. Absolutely practice. So they say practice makes perfect. Absolutely true. So of course, when we do something new, it's never comfortable, right? So go jump in the pool. You know that it's not really deep. You know you're not going to drown. But go try swimming if you never swam before. Are you going to be comfortable? Are you going to be relaxed? Are you going to be saying, no, 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 leave me alone, no, 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 right?
Absolutely, yeah.
But if you keep
Ariana,
doing
I have
it,
to say,
then it's going to get better.
I have to say the silence for the coaches. I mean, we talk about, you know, creating the silent space for the clients, but for me, it's blown my mind away that we as coaches do need to take those minutes or those few moments for ourselves. And I don't think this is something we as coaches practice enough, that we also need that silence after having getting the feedback, after being curious, you know, we take time to process it. So I have a question for, I mean, most of you, I mean, I think this is something for myself. What would be the tips you could tell us to make sure that we practice this silence for us as coaches?
Again, it goes back to trust, and it goes back to self-awareness about wanting to do it. It's an intention. So if you put it as an intention, I am going to be silent, not for me, for my client. It really helps because we are so selfless and we think, okay, we have to do everything for the client. And we don't realize that the silence, even though it's silence for you to process, but the silence is for them. I have to tell you that not ever I had a case where I would say to my client, give me a moment. I really want to think about that, or I really want to process this. Sometimes I know if I'm completely out of, you know, like I really need more than just a few seconds, I'm going to actually ask for permission. You know, I'm going to say that I really would like few moments to really digest that. I have never had a client saying to me no, or getting upset that I'm thinking, because they know that you're not thinking about your to-do list. They know that you're thinking about them. They know that you're in the moment and you're doing it with them, for them.
Coach Fuad, Khadija, I'm taking over from you for a minute. While we're waiting for him, can we ask people to open their cameras if they're comfortable? So we'd like to take one picture just to see who all are there. I can see Othman there.
And also, Coach Ashu, there is an evaluation link. Yes. I put the evaluation for CCEUs. Anyone needs CCEUs can fill it. Thank you.
Yeah, so this event comes with CCUs. Those who would like to claim the CCUs, kindly fill in the evaluation form. We've put in the link in the chat box so that we can send the certificate across to you. So can we have more cameras on so we can take a quick picture?